Welcome to Hours In, a show where we review our experience with a game at different playtimes. Today, on our inaugural episode, we look at our 1 hour, 5 hour, and 10 hour experiences with Marvel's Midnight Suns. Scott!
Heyo, heyo.
Welcome to Hours In.
I mean, I can't wait to get the whole series going and to talk about Midnight Suns because I've been waiting to play past the 10-hour mark.
Yeah,
just so we can record
and,
this
and you can
episode.
begin that soon tonight. So, yeah, I mean, let's just get into this thing. What are we doing here? Well, Midnight Suns has been my most anticipated game of the year, pretty much. I'm a huge XCOM fan, and so I really was looking forward to this. How did you come to Midnight Suns?
I mean, as a friend of yours, it was impossible to not feel the hype. But I feel like over the pandemic, I was also introduced to games like Gloomhaven or other, tactical RPG top-down event combat systems, and I was like really excited to see what new and fresh things could be done. I wouldn't consider myself like a big Marvel fan, but given the track record of the people making Midnight Suns, it looked very promising.
Yeah, and I think as a forewarning to anyone listening to this episode who's like really huge into Marvel, I really want to like lay out here that even though this is my most anticipated game of the year, I am not a Marvel fan. I've played Marvel products. The Marvel Champions card game is one of if not my favorite card game at the moment. In spite of its Marvelness, like Marvel as a franchise for me is fine. If you like it, that's great. It is not really for me. And so despite all that, I was really anticipating this game largely because of the mechanics, right? That's what I was looking forward to here. I'm not really invested.
I mean, the trailers.
Yeah.
Like the trailers showed such like really flashy combat features, some really interesting kind of like mechanics that you could pull off. And I mean, as much as I would also agree that I'm not like a crazy Marvel super fan, there's the idea of like you're encapsulating a hero and their abilities in a very unique kind of mix of card game mechanics and kind of tactical RPG battles.
Yeah.
Which was exciting.
It is exciting. I love a tactical RPG battle. I love card games a la Slay the Spire, Across the Obelisk. Like these are some of my favorite games to play. And so this is really like a big budget implementation of that kind of thing, or so I believed.
We're talking like this is AAA. I mean, the game was about $100 to buy Canadian for any non-Canadian listeners.
Yeah.
But okay, Mark, we have now both gotten to about the 10-hour mark, but let's do our retrospectives as per the podcast expectations.
That's right.
1 hour in, Midnight Suns.
The first hour of Midnight Suns, yes. How was the game for me in the first hour of Midnight Suns? Well, I think in the first hour of Midnight Suns, I did about a mission and a half. Because there is... If you select the tutorial mission, which I did, I wanted to get the full featured experience. It's a lot of cutscene setup and acting between some of these heroes that are beloved for some people, but I don't have much stake in.
Well, and I remember messaging each other being like, I think I'm just watching a movie. Was like what the first hour of this game kind of felt like.
Yeah, the first hour of this game felt like watching a movie. And honestly, there isn't too much to say about the first hour other than
you'll know if your computer can handle the game.
Well, you might know if your computer can handle the game, and we'll get into that too, because the game's kind of split into, 3 different areas. One is cutscenes, and it takes up a lot, especially of that first hour, but as we get into it, even a bit more of the game than that. It's split into the Abbey, which takes the place of, if you're familiar with XCOM, you have your command ship and your command center that you're trying to build up. And the Abbey is that. But unlike with XCOM, which was a huge surprise to me as we get into the middle chunk and the end of that first hour, was you're actually like walking around this space and you're talking with the other superheroes that are there.
Yeah.
It's not just a menu based research and customization system. They want you
Yeah.
to explore the space.
It reminded me a little bit more of Fire Emblem. And
Yeah.
I never finished Fire Emblem, but it gave me
Three
very
houses
similar vibes
specifically.
to kind
Yeah.
of moving. Yeah, sorry, Three Houses. Yeah, of like moving through and talking to the students in the space and finding other things in or around the houses and schools there.
Yeah. There's a lot of like dating sim DNA in the the
But you're not
underlying
actually
systems.
dating them. You're just building friendship.
Not yet, but a la dating sim. And one of the things that you clocked that you told me about it, but I didn't realize it until I got to this last night where I realized every superhero has like a bikini. Because one of the things you can
Yeah,
do is hang out at the pool. And like they're really leaning into this.
yeah, yeah. And I think it catches you by surprise if you're coming from like the XCOM fan base. Um, but I think if you're coming from a Marvel space, you're maybe coming for part of that narrative and part of that relationship building with superheroes and stuff, and like that's totally your jam.
Yeah. There are certainly people that I know for whom I think this is just all upside. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying it's downside in the grand scheme of things for me either, but in that first hour, I was really surprised with what I got. And then the other part of the Abbey that I would like to talk about is like, I have a good computer. That Abbey does not run well. And
I had to change my hairstyle because it could not render.
the hairstyle couldn't render. The Abbey is just completely laggy compared to the combat and the cutscenes. Like it's such a noticeable performance drop
Yeah.
that it's really not a hardware issue. I
Yeah.
don't believe. I think it's really on their end. Like something is not working properly. And the other thing is that like the movement and exploration part of this, like the XCOM folks aren't known for that over the shoulder movement,
Hmm.
and you can tell it feels a bit
Yeah.
rough. And for some reason within that first hour, and then as I guess we'll move into this in a second, within that first 5 hours you spend like equivalent or more, I'm leaning towards more time
More.
in the
Yeah.
Abbey and in the cutscenes than in the third segment of the game, the combat, which if you're coming to this from XCOM, is like 90% of the game. Like the story of XCOM is like, whoa, there's aliens in a mission. Go back to your base, upgrade your base, research your stuff, think about how you want to change your units, next mission. And this is not that.
Yeah. Though so like if we're gonna stick to like the hour, 5 hour, 10 hour kind of markers that we set here, I would say that like unfortunately in the first hour I was worried would be I think the response that I was having of
Yeah.
like I'm an hour into this game now. I've maybe had one combat of like the system that I want to explore, and that combat was very like prescriptive. Like there's no way you're going to lose the tutorial combat.
No.
I mean, I'm sure if someone tried to lose that combat, they could, but you're not going to lose that. And then you're just filled with all of this story, and it's not like the story is bad either. But I was waiting for kind of the meat of the gameplay, which was teased in so many of the trailers and like the hero discussions and kind of the hype for the game. I don't remember seeing in the trailers that I was watching a lot of conversation about like you're going to have to spend a lot of time like filling out this narrative and building relationships. There's conversations about that because there is a mechanic tied to having relationships with certain heroes, but I was a little worried after the first hour into this game.
I was so stressed out because this was not the game that I had anticipated in that hour. I was really like, I didn't lose faith because I had a lot of hope in
Mm-hmm.
and like I trust, I've played so much XCOM that I trust these developers so
Yeah.
much to make good on it that I think to my detriment in that first hour I was so um skeptical and kind of surprised by the flow of the game that I
Yeah.
didn't give the story enough credit or space or some of the acting. Like one of the things that I saw in the lead up to this was like the acting and the story beats are not good, and then people were pulling one clip where you do yoga with Blade that doesn't have the best performance and is kind of like, this is kind of banal and silly.
Yeah.
And that is not emblematic of the quality of performances we're getting here at all.
Yeah.
Like it is pretty damn good. Uh, but
Yeah.
because there's the dating sim DNA, you're gonna get stuff like that in it because you're filling up a
Which
lot of space with trying to build relationships, right? With
I
all
think
this,
it grows on me. Like there's some silliness to it a little bit
yeah. I
that comes with it.
I think as far as the first hour goes, I mean, I think we've said our piece about where we were at, which is like I totally understand if you get this game on, tactical card combat or like XCOM DNA, and in that first hour and a half even, you're like, what the hell is this? This is not what I
Hmm.
wanted. Like there's a lot of mixed reviews on Steam about this, and I think that's part of the problem is
Yeah.
like this if I didn't have the confidence I had that this thing picks up, I probably would have dropped it. If this wasn't like a really anticipated title because of the credibility that the developers have with me,
Yeah.
I probably would have let it go.
But I will also say, moving from the first hour to that 5 hour mark, it's not like my worry went away. It was me almost feeling like I had to persevere to get there. Like about 5 hours into the game is when I started to see a chance for me to have more agency in what was happening. Like I think the actual established part of this game, and if anyone's, hasn't picked it up yet and is interested, it's about 5 hours of going through cutscenes and like basic mechanics and like maybe what 5, 8 fights that you actually play out in the first five
It's
hours.
very little within that 5 hours of the game. Less than half of it is spent in the combat, which is
Hmm.
such a strange choice.
And I kept playing because I had booked the day, well, the evening that day to play it, and I'm like, I'm gonna commit to the 5 hours that I set to play, and so I kept going through it. But the more and more I was in these stories, I remember messaging him like, I'm still in the movie, man. Like I'm still I'm
Yeah,
still watching the clips, and I'm just like I'm itching to do what this cool combat has been hyped up to do, and all of those early combats are so like because you also can't play the game on a harder difficulty.
yeah,
And so it's not like those early combats are crazy difficult.
they're not, and you
Um,
don't have any or much choice on who you actually take with you either.
or the builds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the tutorial of this game is about 5 hours long.
Yeah. Because I will say I was supposed to, stop and think about my 5 hours, but I played 5.5, and I'm really glad I played that last half hour,
Yeah.
the 5.5, because that was when I started to see what the actual gameplay was going to be
Yeah.
for the
So
rest of the game.
I just hit the 5 hour mark last night. I've probably played about 5 hours, 20 minutes or so of this thing. And it is between hour 4 and 5 when you start to unlock the research options, the combat item options, where you start collecting a lot of resources and you realize like they are building in that XCOM DNA into this, where you're going to have to make these meta decisions about what combat items you build, when you use them, because they're not giving you enough resources for everything. You're going to have to decide what heroes you build your friendships with, and this is a core part of the game because they get bonuses based on your rapport with them, and you're also
Very
making
good bonuses.
very good
Like
bonuses
like character necessary in some cases.
yeah, you effectively get increased passives uh, that don't change the play style, but kind of make the card play and the combats work. So you have to actually you have to play around with that social system. But there's another catch to this, which is there's like a light side, dark side mechanic in this game,
Yeah.
and a lot of your choices are on either of those sides, and some of the choices you make are produce negative friendship
Yeah.
points with people.
Yeah. So actually, serious question: are you going for the light or for the darkness?
So what I decided to do, this is so interesting. Okay, that we're going this direction. The way I decided to do this is completely organically because I didn't really research too much about the game ahead of time. I just,
Hmm.
I went in with full trust, and I got to this point where I really enjoyed it because I just started making the dialogue choices that I would make. Like there's Mass Effect style dialogue choices in this game
Yeah.
with all the characters. I just made the choices that I would make, and whatever friendships built or declined as a
Based off
consequence of
that.
that, I was like, this is who I'll use. And of course, I end up leaning dark side,
Yeah. Okay.
and I'm paired up with some of the folks who are way more interested in, the gray area.
Yeah. No. I am also so typically. I would probably go light side, but I had made some enemies of some certain heroes. Not enemies, I just didn't like their dialogue choices, and so I clicked some early dark side choices, and then I just have doubled down.
Yeah.
I'm just like, nah, I'm embracing the darkness. And it's been really interesting because you get like the you play as the hunter, which is a class that like it's not a superhero that actually exists, and you're kind of building them based off the cards that you earn through the fights and stuff you're doing. But depending on if you're dark or light, you get dark cards suggested to you or light cards suggested to you. And the dark cards, a lot of them are like very like assassiny, like you get like concealment or like you give yourself vulnerable in exchange for dealing like tons of damage. And I typically would play games the light way, which are like heal cards and like tank cards. So it's been very weird for me of like I've ended up building myself as like this weird like assassin, when typically I would play this game very much support style.
Yeah. There's a fantastic dark heal card. Did you get that though?
It is, yes, it is. But the other ones I've gotten have all been high damage
Yeah,
kill
okay.
murder.
Right. Murder, death, kill.
I do think there's some flexibility, right? Like again, there's a lot of game here,
Hmm.
um, and you're just getting a hint of that at the 5.5 hour mark. Like, I think that's when the game actually opens up, and you're like, okay, there's a pattern here. There's more game to uncover.
Right.
Because at 5.5 hours, you've actually really unlocked no one new, really.
Yeah, you
Like
have
you've gotten the main cast that they introduce you with, but if you've looked into the game ahead of time, you know that there's a good amount of heroes in the game, and you haven't really seen any indication of when you get them.
yeah. It's there's a long road ahead from that first 5 hours, and there's also a talent tree that I don't even have unlocked yet. That's one of the things that I know is in the game, but I don't have access to that.
Oh, I don't, I don't think that it's in my game yet.
Yeah, so 10 hours in, you don't have access to your talent trees. Well, yeah, the hunter has a talent tree, and
Either that or I missed it.
there's three paths. Well, that could be a thing too. And there's a thing that's happening with the tutorials, which is like they spend a lot of time on what I would assume to be very obvious things. But I
And not a
think
lot on the very convoluted things.
well, that's it too. Like the research system, it doesn't really explain to you how it works. And for me, it's like a very intuitive. Oh, this is XCOM. Like I have to do a thing to unlock the prerequisites. Then I spend days, or you have like these ops missions where you can
Mhm.
send out heroes to do things,
That is a great
but
feature.
now they're not available for your mission. So you actually do have to diversify your team because you probably
Yeah.
want to send out your good heroes on ops missions so they get these bonuses,
Hmm.
but then you don't have them when you're actually going into combat. So you probably need a roster of like 5 or 6
Six.
heroes
Yeah.
that
The
you swap
problem too,
between.
though, you have to be friendly with those 6 people too, because
Yeah.
if you don't build friendship with people, you won't get the good cards for them, you won't get the good passes for them, and then all of a sudden you have to go on an op mission with like in my case, I'm not friends with Captain Marvel. She doesn't like my darkness. I'm too
Same.
edgy for her.
Yep.
And I bring her into fights and she feels very weak because I have her base set of cards. I've unlocked nothing. I think I have one new card for her.
Hmm.
Um and so I like sometimes I send her off on those side missions just so I have a few cards in her deck for when I have to take her on a mission. Um, which is interesting. I don't like how forced I feel to take certain people. I mean, honestly, I've been actively avoiding taking Blade on missions too.
Really? Okay. I want to. So last night, here's my argument for Blade though. He has this card called Stake, and
Yes,
it does an F ton of damage. It has some other effects on it, but
and
the
heals
animation
him.
is incredible. He jumps up into the air, is surrounded by blood, and he takes a wooden stake and he stabs a dude in the chest with it. Now, why is this awesome? Because last night I did a mission where you have to destroy 2 generators. Okay, and Blade was the mandatory character you had to take. I staked
Take
the
a
shit out
generator.
of a generator.
No, there is some like weird, funny kind of like things that occur when you're using like these really like epic cards to just destroy like a box on the ground too.
Yeah.
But speaking of the use of terrain in this game, I really like.
Yeah, I do too.
I I have been like really enjoying the counterplay of choosing. So you earn, for the listeners who haven't played, using your cards either eat up your resources that you gain or earn you the resources that you gain, and
Heroism.
it's called heroism. And it's hard to sometimes get that depending on who you're playing with. But to use a lot of the environmental effects, it also eats up heroism. So there's this weird balance of like kicking a big crate at a bunch of goons or like saving it up to use like your big hero ability. Which I really have enjoyed, that like extra decision making process. Plus the animations for that feel really good.
Yeah, and then sometimes there are like objectives you need to complete that also use heroism, like rescuing civilians and stuff. So
Yeah.
you have to really balance what you're doing, and there are a lot of tactical decisions. And one of the like, other complaints that I saw about the early reviews of this game was that the terrain isn't very interesting. But I'm like, considering this is a card battler, right? Like it's not a tactical game like XCOM. They do actually use the space in interesting ways. Like
Hmm.
there are a bunch of obstacles placed all around the map that
Yeah.
you can use with different heroes to knock things into, to get stuns on enemies
Yeah.
that
I
can
do
really
think
ruin your day. Like I actually think the terrain stuff is really cool.
it's a fresh breath of air for me because like I feel like when you look at XCOM gameplay or if you play XCOM, you have like these percentages to make the shot because someone's like behind a wall or in a
Mm-hmm.
doorway, and there's no cover in this game.
No,
At least that I've really clocked in the
no.
same way, and everyone's going to hit you. Like they're if they have their eyes on you, they're going to hit you. And so the ways that you deal with that is you either incapacitate them, you kill them, or you use like taunts and shields to negate what the hits are going to do. And so you're using the terrain much more like offensively than defensively, which I really like.
Yeah, but movement also does matter because there are area effective attacks that will
Yes.
happen at the end of your turn, so you have to move your characters. Card plays
You
can
don't
move
get
your
a lot of
characters.
movement.
Sometimes you have one movement by default for one of your heroes of the three that you bring in, and
So
when to
you can play
use
around
that.
it a bit.
Yeah, you can play around it. When to use it matters. There are also like one of the items that you can make that you can use. You get to bring one item. At least so far, I can only bring one
You
item.
can unlock more
You can
slots.
unlock more slots, I figured, but at the start you can only bring in one combat item, and one of the items you can build for yourself is give yourself a second move point, like just once, and it can matter because there's a lot of directional and spacing attacks.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's interesting the way this uses the space as one of these card battlers. Like
And I think at
it's
the
cool.
5.5 hour mark, you just start to get that taste. Like you've finally gotten through this like marathon
Yeah.
of cutscenes into you're kind of starting to get a chance to choose your mission, which to me was the biggest thing of like all those cutscenes for the first 5 hours was like a cutscene and then like a mission that you had no choice over.
Hmm.
And now it's like you have a few options and you can play around with those options and look at what those options get you for what you're trying to build in your base. And the game starts to feel more alive. And I think because you're not at the 10-hour mark yet, right, Mark?
No.
And I am, and but I also think where we are in the game is actually almost the same
Yeah.
because I've been spending a lot of time once I got to that 5.5 hour mark just doing side missions to build up like my research deck and to like open
Yep.
up new slots for items, and those kind of pieces of the game where like narratively there's a lot of game here because you just unlocked the first kind of big unlockable character.
Yes.
I have not unlocked anyone since them as
Yeah.
well, and
We
I'm
we
10 hours
we
in.
both basically stopped at the same story point and just kind of did a few side quests. You probably have done like 10 more than me based on the extra
Yeah, no,
hours
a good
in
amount, a
a
good
good
amount.
amount. But at this point, it doesn't totally matter in terms of what we're seeing because the game opens. You have choices of what to do. You have choices of who to be friends with, whereas before the whole game is really prescriptive. Even last night, I spent a good chunk of time walking around the Abbey because there's like
I was gonna
collection
ask.
quests.
I probably spent at least an hour and a half, if not
Yeah,
2 hours now, just
yeah,
running around the Abbey.
I did. Of my 5.5, I spent probably an hour. And the
Yeah.
movement's still not good, but like I don't think the exploratory puzzle part of it is also terrible.
No, I was surprised that I was okay with it.
Yeah. It,
I
it,
was pleasantly surprised.
it actually reminds me a bit of a game you probably didn't play, but Dragon Age Inquisition when it came out. There's
Mm,
a lot of just going around the environment. The puzzles weren't made super well, but it was still pleasant to go collect these things that were kind of obvious to get.
yeah.
One of the old Mortal Kombats had a feature like this as well, where you'd go roam about the world and just do these really basic collection tasks and explore a really tiny space. But like as a breather, I felt like it was satisfying despite how janky the
Yeah.
Abbey is. I liked
No, it
it.
is, and like the run animation definitely feels a bit weird.
It's bad.
At least it's not great. Like you can I felt like I was just like a human horse for a little bit. Like it was a weird dynamic, but
Yeah.
like there's options here, and they can kind of matter for the gameplay because you can like find keys to open chests and then chests to open other things. And it's kind of really like there's three games here where you have the
Hmm.
whole social system in the Abbey. You have this kind of uncovering the plot narrative of like yourself and the Abbey through like this environmental storytelling, and then you have like the actual combat system in the game there.
Yeah.
And it's cool, but you don't feel that coolness until about 5.5 hours in.
Yeah. It doesn't come together. It doesn't give you much choice with what you're engaging with until you are like 5.5 ish hours into the game. And so I think the one thing I would say if anyone is listening to this, give it at least that amount of time if you can, because it does get good. It got to the point where yesterday, up until that 5 hour mark, I was really like loath to boot the game because I was
Yeah.
like, it's just going to be another 30 minutes of this story
I
at the
actually ordered
Abbey.
food to get through the cutscenes, y'all.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh, but then by the end of last night, when it was actually like, now I am playing the game, you basically said this to me before I ended up playing my session yesterday, which is like you feel like you're in a session, like a routine of like
yeah,
you wake up, you do stuff, you do a mission. At night, there's more stuff to do. You do your research orders, you do your build orders, you get your new cards, you change your deck,
all that
do it
stuff has
again.
choice involved, which
Yeah.
makes it feel better than just binary
Yeah,
actions.
it all feels like gameplay is mainly the thing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's kind of where we are right now, and we'll probably do another kind of follow-up soon of like,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna keep playing this game.
Yeah, I
I've
am
been
as well.
holding off playing this so I didn't have too many thoughts to share and add to the game. But before I think we move to like ending and like the next experience, I'm curious, Mark, who your currently favorite heroes are.
Yeah, we have this roster. There is one thing I want to talk about before we get to the current heroes, because I do want to do this
Okay.
as like our big closer. But I did have one last concern that I wanted to bring up before we do this.
Hmm.
Um, the I find the writing in this to not be bad. I don't think it's bad,
But
but it is so Marvel referential. Like
yes.
they are just name dropping tons of random Marvel characters and events at times, and like it's a very in joke built way of talking. And
Mhm.
this changes a bit with some of like Nico's character. I don't think does this as much, but like Strange, the Caretaker, Iron Man, mainly the people who you spend that first 5 hours with, all
Yeah.
like those core Marvel IP folks from the movies, they're really just all about like name. It's not even like a lore dive, but it's really like shallow name drops of like, ooh, the Harry Osborn has this thing. And I'm like,
I've
this is some low hanging fruit to build like pithy dialogue off of.
I think there's an assumption that if you're playing it, you have like Marvel knowledge, and so if you don't, you're just gonna have like a bunch of reference. I feel like it's one of the first times when I went into like a game store for one of the first times, and people were just kind of talking about like the Marvel movies, and I had seen like a few, but I'd never read like the comic books when I was like whatever, 14, whatever. And I remember like people were making all these references to like what this was happening in the comic book and how that's gonna happen in the movies, and I was like, I don't know, I didn't get any of that, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's a
so
lot over your head,
yeah.
but it's not like it's bad.
No, I don't think it's bad, and I think it's specifically made this way to appeal to comic readers specifically,
Mm.
especially maybe
Well, there's
comic.
comic books collectible in the game.
Yeah, but those are also cool. The photos you can make after you do a mission, where you can make like a comic book cover and customize it, and you can hang it up in the
Wait, you can
manor.
customize the cover?
Yeah, so XCOM has a feature like this where after you succeed at a mission, it has your whole squad up and you can like
Yeah.
rearrange that stuff. So after you finish those missions, that comic book cover that you see, you can
Yeah.
edit that and move it around and change
You can
it.
edit that?
Yeah, and then you can take a screenshot of it and then you can put it up in the manor.
I did not know this at all. Did
Yeah,
I just miss this part of the tutorial when I
it
was like
doesn't tell
probably
you.
skipping? It doesn't tell
Listen,
you.
it's going to tell you that combat exists in this game, but all the weird subsystems, it's not going to tell you how any of those work.
I had no idea. I just thought it was like, oh, here's your comic book shot of the fight, and then I was like, okay.
No, you can edit that around. I made a
I've been
couple
taking
ridiculous
down
ones
paintings
already.
across the Abbey left and right. I have like a whole gallery in my pocket right now.
Are you putting new paintings up?
No, they're all blank canvases.
Oh my god. So there's another feature too, which is really weird, is you can collect these like classic paintings and then change the paintings in the Abbey, which is like, I'm not sure who this was for.
But you have to pay like the currency to put them back up. So I just took them all down and then didn't want to
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
the
There's a currency that unlocks like cosmetics and stuff for everyone, including your
I bought a
room.
rug.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was the first thing I bought. I was like, this room needs a rug, man.
I
Um,
needed it though. Yeah.
so one last thing I want to say
And an
about.
upgraded dog bed.
Yeah, I didn't buy the dog bed yet. The dog has a weird tongue. Like the way that tongue is animated, it creeps me out a little bit. The one last thing I wanted to say about the story, the way that that is going, or at least the way like the dialogue and the writing is
Yeah.
built, is the Marvel movies, I think, did a really good job of humanizing some two dimensional, or at least characters that were believed to be two dimensional, where the writing in comic books was always perceived to be a bit infantile. The
Mhm.
movies did a great job like humanizing those kinds of characters. And for some of these characters, the way they are written, not all of them, but for some of them, I feel like they're kind of going back in reverse, especially with like
Mm.
Iron Man, Doctor Strange a little
So they're
bit.
a bit binary.
Yeah, they don't, which again, maybe them being a bit more shallow, certainly in the first 5 hours of this, is part of the intention to make the actual core Midnight Suns crew of like Magic and
Nico,
Nico
Ghost Rider,
and
Blade.
the new Ghost Rider, the non Nick Cage Ghost Rider,
I
uh,
love him though.
to make them. No, I actually I really like that whole. Those three are amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, to give them a little bit more depth and substance, because I don't feel like they're
Yeah.
written in the same way. They aren't relying on like tropey
I
Marvelisms, I
I
guess.
wonder though, have you been trying to build rapport with Iron Man or Strange? Because I haven't
Yeah,
been. And so to
my
me,
first date was Strange.
okay. Because I've just kind of ignored them both. So to me, they're kind of just the guys that help me upgrade some of my gear and then occasionally appear in like the main story clips at this point.
Yeah, I feel like that's what they are now becoming. Because let's get into this. Who are the top three right now?
I actually think Strange is secretly really good. He's got some of the best support cards in the game because he gives you larger hand sizes and a lot of heroism, but I don't want to play him.
Right. I may end up running him fully, although he's not in my current top three. I'm gonna be
No.
honest.
So
So
what's your current type fleet? I'm guessing Blade because you kill
well, my
generators with a
number
stake.
three is gonna be Blade. Uh, although I'm gonna be honest, I don't think he's incredible.
He's
it's
very single target for me.
it's more of a meme thing. He's very single target. He's
And
really
his
high
bleed
single
mechanic
target
doesn't excite
damage.
me.
The bleed does a lot of damage.
It does, but I feel like there's other like conditions that I'd rather put on people.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that for sure. I don't know
Okay,
if
so
I'll
Blade.
keep running Blade. I also don't have any improved cards for Blade yet. I'm still only playing with his core. But
No,
like
he's got some cool cards.
I, was back to back staking people and I had a great time, including inanimate objects. My number
No,
two is Nico.
okay.
I got one of her upgraded cards that just hits like a bus.
The
And
witch bolt or the
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I don't fully remember what it does. It was very late last night when I finished playing, but I
it's
was
very
like, that
cool.
seems like a
But
lot
it's
of
RNG
damage.
heavy. Nico's whole thing for those listening is she's very like random. Like her cards have random effects tied to them, or like they'll hit random targets but deal a lot of damage. Or the damage on the cards is modular. It's like randomized when it enters your hand.
Yeah. And my number one is Magic. She's awesome.
She's really cool.
Yeah. As soon as I saw her like a trailer video, I just like she opens portals and she knocks people through portals to redirect them, and she can group people together in a single area. And like I'm just gonna run her the whole game. I don't even care. I just
She's
find like
really good. She's one of
repositioning
my
is
best
super
friends right
fun.
now.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually haven't been running her as much as I like her. Like I ran a few games with her and I enjoy playing with her, but she needs a lot of heroism. And
Yeah.
I'm running other people that also need heroism, and so I can't run her with those people. So if I had to give my three that I'm currently running, my number three would be Nico. I do like her gameplay. She's kind of supportive, which I always like in games. She has a heal. She has a few heals actually, which is cool that you can unlock. My number two is Spider-Man.
You like Spider-Man?
Uh, I really like Spider-Man. I didn't think I'd like Spider-Man. I wasn't going to run him. Um, but he does a lot of stuff with the environment, and he can weirdly just do a lot of card draw and self kind of management
Yeah.
without like the rest of his team. Like he can kind of slot in anywhere, and he feels really. I've really enjoyed playing him. And then my number one is Ghost Rider right now,
I did like
which
Ghost
I
Rider
did
as well.
not think I would like. I'm not gonna lie, like Ghost Rider's flair and flavor, all that stuff is not a thing I typically look for in games.
Yeah, but this version
But
of
I
Ghost Rider is
love
like a
it.
cool dude.
No, but like even like the mechanics when I looked at like this gameplay video, I didn't think I'd like it, but he's fantastic. And
Yeah.
but he can't you can't run him with magic, I don't think, because
No.
they both require high energy, high heroism
Yeah. I
cards.
I hate his car. He has a card that summons his car and he runs people over, and like the card is good.
It's a good card.
But man, I that animation is like anathema to
It's a lot.
whatever I find aesthetically appealing.
But like it so his whole thing too is he wants to be the one killing people. And so he like kills people and then he gets souls and the souls give him permanent HP bonuses for the fight. And so I'm running him with Spider-Man who does a lot of little bits of damage to everyone.
Yeah.
And then he finishes them off and then runs everyone over at the end of the fight with a car. And it feels great every time.
No, it doesn't work. I did have a good time like on the one that I ran him, but I was like, I think my portal girl is just in it. And I
Yeah.
suspect she might be underpowered, but I don't care.
She's very environmentally determinate though, my understanding. Because
Yeah,
she
yeah,
wants the portals to like send people into like generators to
exactly.
stun
Which means like
them and
she's
stuff.
only as good as any given stage is at providing you environmental hazards.
I also think she's the one that needs the most friendship because her passive is she gets more portal cards the higher friendship you are with her.
Yeah, well, I'm her and I are gonna go to a metal concert because that's what she's into, and so I'm gonna get that friendship up. But
She's amazing.
yeah, I also think that she wants like a big AOEer to pair
Yeah,
with as well.
which
So you
there
can
isn't one yet.
yeah, that's coming soon. Although we'll
I have a
see.
feeling.
We'll
There's a
we'll
few AoEs. The car is an AoE, but
what's a straight line?
yeah. But
Also,
yeah,
okay,
so I'm
okay.
curious to see what our thoughts are
Before we
down the
leave,
road.
I want to talk about this. There's a mission where you have to destroy a helicopter, okay? And
I hit it with a
I
car.
I I killed it by crashing the car into it.
Yeah, I killed it with a car.
Yeah, because that's just what
Top
you
tier.
do. Of course that's how you do it. But I also wanted to line it up so that I was going to kill two dudes and then crash the car into the helicopter. But I
Yeah.
had also one of the things that Ghost Rider can do is you can place a hole behind
Yeah,
people and you can knock
which
them
is
into
cool.
it. I placed the hole between the two people and the helicopter, and the car can't go over the hole.
No, it can't.
And so, and so the car just stopped instead of killing the helicopter. And I was like, oh no, I'm
No,
out
it's
of
fun. There's a lot
time.
of choice there, though.
Yeah, there's a lot. It wasn't too hard, but I now the missions are starting to get a bit challenging, and
I have to restart missions.
I feel like for me, I'm gonna be if I can at whatever point I'm able to raise that difficulty like one notch, I'm gonna be really happy with the
So the
way.
game actually asks you to raise the difficulty. In between that 5 and 10 hour mark, when I was doing a lot of side missions, I'd like get a 3-star success on a mission, and it'd be like, you should raise the difficulty, and so then
Right.
I would just push it up.
Oh, so
And
it's
so
like
you unlock them as you're playing,
yeah, and it's going with you. That's interesting. It's a
and then you
really
can choose to level up your difficulty. You don't have to, but you get
yeah,
more rewards.
that's a really strange way of doing game balance to me. Of like XCOM is just like pick a hard Iron Man mode, and then if you fail, you're a failure. But
It's kind of nice though, because you can modulate your gameplay difficulty at any time.
no, it's true. It's true. I'm just such a snob. Like I want this game to punish me, and the combat's not super easy. It isn't like XCOM, like you fucked up and now your game is done hard. Certainly
Right.
not yet. Although like there has been, I had to restart one thing based off a mistake I made, and I liked it. I liked that I made that mistake, and the game was like, "You fool, you're doomed now." Because your mistakes in this, like you're really strong and it feels like you're not going to lose, but if you make a key mistake at the wrong time, it will compound right? It's just like the
Yes.
chain reaction
No, no.
begins.
I straight up did a scenario, saw that I was going to lose, restarted it, messed up my first round of card plays, and just restarted it again because I
Yeah.
knew it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. Which I think is fine. I'm actually really enjoying that, and so hopefully it keeps up. And I really don't want to become like too overpowered because I like the game to be a challenge the whole way through, and hopefully that keeps
I
up.
think the challenge scales with the game, and I think for anyone coming into it, the more you play the game, the better you'll become at the game too. But like I'm still feeling challenged. I'm 10 hours and like 20 minutes in or something now, and
Yeah.
I'm not feeling like this is a smooth ride.
I can't wait to play this again.
Yeah, and so maybe as the off, if you had to give one emotional response to each hour mark,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Okay. So for hour 1, 2, 3, and 4, my emotional response is, "Come on, let's get going."
Good one-word response, really solid.
Yeah, well, it couldn't be one word. That's what I said the most. Is just like, instead of a word, you know what it is? It's my hand moving forward in a circular motion, as if to say, like, "Come on, let's go, let's go." And then in hour 5, my one word response is finally.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I feel like for me, it was like anxiety for the first 4 and a bit hours of
Yeah.
like, is this going to be the game that I want it to be? And I literally was just like, maybe I just don't play this again. And then I got to the 5.5 where the game started to flow, and I was like curious because then the game actually started to intrigue me again. And now at the 10.5 hour mark, I would say that I'm slightly addicted.
Yeah, I'm getting there too. Like, I didn't want to shut it off last night, and I finished pretty late. Although I actually didn't shut the game off. It crashed on me at the end of a mission that I still don't know if it actually saved after I completed it. So maybe Blade actually never stabbed that tank. So we'll find out later tonight if I ever get to it.
Well, you can do it again and then clip it for all of the social media.
That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna give it the clippies. Well, that's it for our first episode of Hours In. I hope you enjoyed being with us, and let us know how your own Marvel Midnight Suns experience is going this many hours into the game. And we'll be back in a week or two with another hour interval to let you know how it's all going. And future us, I hope we're having a great time.
I hope so too. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Peace.